Okay, I'll call this April 13 meeting of the State Board of Elections to order. First of all, I'd request that all non-participants mute their lines. Secretary LaCruz, will you call the roll?
Chairman Brink.
Present.
Vice Chair Lenin.
Here.
Secretary LaCruz, aye. Delegate Merrick.
Here.
Ms. Chang.
Here. We have a quorum live of 5 people. For the record, I'll note that Susan Beals, the new commissioner, and Joshua Leaf from the Office of Attorney General are also participating in the meeting today. Before we proceed, I'd just like to welcome Commissioner Beals to her first board meeting. She comes to the department with valuable on-the-ground experience in elections. She most recently served as the Chesterfield County Electoral Board Secretary and Chairman. She's also worked in legislative advisory roles at the state and federal levels. Commissioner Beals, we look forward to working with you and to hearing from you in your commissioner's report shortly. Now, as to public comment, at the conclusion of today's meeting, the board will go into closed session to receive the advice of counsel. Before going into closed session, the board will receive public comment on items not on today's agenda. Without objection, members of the public will be heard for 3 minutes and are welcome to submit statements for the record. The first order of business is approval of the minutes from our meeting of March 1, 2022. I have one minor but very important correction to the minutes on line 155. The Secretary of the Fairfax County Electoral Board is spelled Hanley, H-A-N-L-E-Y, not Henley. Secretary LaCruz, does anyone else have any additional comments or questions? If not, Secretary LaCruz.
With the amendment from Chairman Brink, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. Secretary LaCruz, call the roll.
Chairman Brink.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lenin.
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, aye. Delegate Merrick.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
The minutes are approved 5-0. Next order of business is the Commissioner's report.
Good afternoon.
Commissioner Beals.
I am delighted to join you today for my first Board of Elections meeting as Commissioner. From my experience helping to run elections on the local level during 2019, 2020, and 2021, I have developed a deep respect for general registrars and electoral board members and the thousands of officers of election across the Commonwealth who serve on Election Day. I'm now very excited to get to work with the talented and dedicated team here at the Department of Elections and the devoted members of our state board. I believe that together we can build on the strengths of the department and move forward to improve our processes as we face new challenges. And I look forward to growing even stronger partnerships with registrars and electoral board members. Their wealth of knowledge and feedback from their on-the-ground experience with voters is critical as we strive to meet the goals of the department's strategic plan. So thank you for the warm welcome that I have received from the team here at the department and from the members of our board. I'm very excited to get to work. I was asked to provide an update on the Veris replacement project, so wanted to give you some information about that. As you know, the RFP for this project was released last year in March 2021, and proposals were due in May of 2021. In June of last year, this board was given a presentation outlining the procurement process and was provided with a timeline that suggested that a contract award for the Veris replacement project could possibly be made around September of 2021. Procurement timelines established in RFPs are estimates based on the information known at the time of issuance, and that was an overly optimistic projection. This procurement meets the criteria of a high-risk contract and is therefore subject to additional approvals from both the AG's office and from VETA to ensure that any proposed contract will attain such approvals. We are working with both of these agencies. Due to the identification of this project as high risk, and the scrutiny that is attached to that level of procurement, those are other reasons why the timeline has been pushed back. Additionally, there has been turnover in the senior management team of the department over the past 6 months. All of those vacancies have since been filled, with the most recent hires starting this past Monday. As you know, Verus was implemented in 2007. It is now 15 years old. We are expecting to use this new system for a decade. As a result, the department is working hard to ensure that we acquire a system that can meet that expectation. For example, the RFP for this project included approximately 750 technical and functional requirements, which will help us meet the state and federal laws and regulations associated with it. So currently we are in the evaluation process of this procurement. Because this procurement is subject to the Virginia Public Procurement Act, which requires a closed process until award of a contract, we are unable to discuss the evaluation process. However, to increase our forward momentum, the department has enlisted additional assistance, and we have established weekly subject matter expert meetings and other meeting cadences. Our team is working diligently to both secure the best system for the citizens of the Commonwealth and to keep the procurement process moving forward. We are also in the midst of redistricting, as many of you know. That's why many of you are here. Following the 2020 census, this is a process that was delayed by several factors, including the delayed release of census data. The process of updating Verus to reflect the redistricting changes is truly a partnership between local registrars and our team here at the department. We have taken steps within the department to redeploy resources to process these changes, and we are using nights and weekends to do this work within Verus, but I would like to personally thank our general registrars for their work and their patience in this process. They have been fantastic partners. As you know, several bills passed this session related to elections. We are in the process of looking at those to determine how to implement them. You are going to hear a briefing later in the agenda from Ashley Coles, who will talk to you about the new legislation. And finally, I wanted to take a moment to introduce the new staff that we have on board that you may have not met yet. These are folks that have either joined us in the last couple of weeks, maybe one is in the last couple of months. First, Jonathan Barbette is our Chief Information Security Officer. If you could say hello, Jonathan. Michael Nicolais is our Chief Technology Officer. He just joined us on Monday. Vicki Manwaring is our Registrar Liaison. I don't know that she's here with us. Taylor Sullivan is our External Affairs Assistant. Taylor's in the back. And Mark Hammer is our Automated Quality Assurance Analyst. I'm not sure if Mark's here either, but we're thrilled to have them on board, and we're getting them onboarded as quickly as possible and up to speed. So with that, conclude my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Beals. Do the members have any questions of the Commissioner?
Could we get some chairs for them, though? I don't want them to have to stand up.
I think we're receiving the fire.
Oh, okay. I don't want you to be uncomfortable.
We haven't done that yet.
All right. Okay. I'd like to thank you for that presentation, and particularly the description of the status of the procurement of what cannot be called Verus 2.0. I think that there's been quite a bit of media attention to this in the past couple of weeks, and I appreciate your very concise description of where we are on that. The next item on our agenda is 6 localities' requests for a waiver to administer a split precinct. Ms. Coles?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. So we will discuss each locality individually so we can address the board's decision to approve, deny, or defer their split precinct waiver request. As a reminder, split precincts must be eliminated in any congressional district, Senate district, House of Delegates district, and election district used for the election of one or more members of the governing body or the school board for the county or city, unless the waiver is granted by the state board. Traditionally, waivers are granted for localities that do not have the minimum number of registered voters required. So for a county, that is 100, a city, that is 500. The first locality we have on the agenda is Southampton County. This locality was deferred from the previous state board meeting last month. They currently have a congressional split, and that split will not be cured before the June primary, so they are requesting a waiver from the state board to administer the split precinct, which would be utilized during the June primary election. We do have the general registrar available, I believe, for comment for the board if you have any questions, just so the locality can advocate for their request.
Yes, I'm here.
This, Lynn Burgess?
Yes.
Okay. We have the request from Southampton County for split precinct number 702 Newsome's. Would you like to present any information on this?
Just that, we're split congressionally in that one precinct only, and that, so that I can conduct the primary election is the reason why we requested it, and that the county is in the process of finalizing their request for certification of no objection from the Attorney General. So I'm kind of waiting on the county.
Okay, thank you. Do the members have any questions of the registrar? Any member of the public wish to be heard on this request? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the board approve the request for a waiver.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Southampton County's request be approved. Will the secretary call the roll?
Chairman Green?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Maris?
Aye.
Ms. Chang? Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Ms. Coles?
The next locality we have on the agenda is Fairfax County. They have 4 split precincts, and at this time, each of those split precincts impact no voters. They're district line split, and for them to cure those split precincts, they would have to establish 4 additional precincts that would have no voters in them. So they are just requesting a waiver from the state board. This is...
Okay, thank you. Anyone from Fairfax County wish to be heard?
Good afternoon, Chairman Brink, members of the State Board. I'm Martin Desjardins, Assistant County Attorney to the Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County, Virginia. As Ms. Coles just relayed, there are 4 precincts at issue here. The county received its certification of no objection with regards to local redistricting back in December, around the 15th, I believe. We just received our certification of no objection with regards to all the changes that were wrought once state and congressional redistricting were done, which of course created numerous splits that needed to be resolved. Almost all of those splits were resolved. The only 4 that are problematic are the 4 before you, in which the splits that remain, which, if the line is here versus here kind of thing, and the properties involved don't have any registered voters in them, to the extent there are even significant properties involved. So the Board of Supervisors requested by resolution, or decided, I should say, by resolution to present this before you, to bring this before you, and it was prepared by members of the Office of Elections in accordance with the request in the resolution, and we appreciate your review and hope for its approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Do the members have any questions of the Fairfax County representative? Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this request? If not, I'll entertain a motion that Fairfax County's request for a waiver be approved.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the request be approved. Secretary LaCruz, will you call the roll?
Chairman Green?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Maris?
Aye.
Ms. Chang? Aye.
The motion is approved 5-0. Ms. Coles?
I didn't know there was any place in Fairfax that didn't have voters.
When there's a water tower in the way, we can't put a voter there.
And of course, as a reminder, we do have a lot of guests here, just split precinct waivers. When they are presented to the board, they are approved by the governing body before we do present them to you. So the next locality on the list is Hanover County. They have a split in precinct 206. It appears to be a split for House of Delegates District 60 and Congressional District 5. This impacts 24 voters in their precincts, and so they are requesting a split precinct waiver.
Thank you. Anyone from Hanover County wish to be heard on this request? All right. Anyone from the public wish to be heard on Hanover County's request? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the request be approved.
Move approval of Hanover's request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the request be approved. Secretary LaCruz?
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon.
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, aye. Delegate Merrick.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
The request is approved 5-0. Next up is Chesterfield County. Ms. Coles?
So Chesterfield County has two precincts that have splits in them. For precinct 402, there is a split between congressional districts 1 and 4, and this impacts 92 voters, which is under the 100 voter minimum requirement. And for precinct 412, they have a split as well between congressional districts 1 and 4, and the number of voters impacted in this precinct is 4. So they are requesting a waiver from this report.
Okay. Anyone from from Chesterfield County wish to be heard on this request? Anyone from the public wish to be heard? If not, I'll entertain a motion that Chesterfield County's request be approved.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Been moved and seconded that the request be approved. Secretary LaCruz, will you call the roll?
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon.
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, aye. Delegate Merrick.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
The request is approved 5-0. Next up is Prince William County.
So Prince William County has two split precincts. For precinct 208, there are congressional splits as well as Virginia House District split, which impacts 48 voters. And then for precinct 604, there is a split that impacts 27 voters. And they are requesting a waiver.
For 208 and 604? Okay. Is anyone from Prince William County present to be heard on this request? Okay. Any member of the public wish to be heard on this request? If not, I'll entertain a motion that this request be approved.
Move approval of Prince William County's request.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Secretary LaCruz, will you call the roll?
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon.
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, aye. Delegate Merrick.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
The request is approved 5-0. Finally, Roanoke County.
The Roanoke County has two split precincts as well. Both of these splits appear to impact their Senate district. For precinct 103, it currently impacts 8 voters, and for precinct 106, it impacts 2 voters. And so they're requesting a split precinct waiver from the state.
Anyone from Roanoke County present to be heard on this request? Anybody in the queue? All right. Anyone from the public wish to be heard on this request? If not, I'll entertain a motion that Roanoke County's request for a waiver be approved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the request be approved. Secretary LaCruz, you call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Secretary LaCruz, aye. Delegate Merrick. Ms. Chang.
Aye.
The request is approved 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Coles.
And it's going to stay right here since on the next agenda.
And our next item of business is a recap of legislation that was passed during the regular session of the General Assembly. Ms. Coles.
So, this General Assembly session, the legislative body passed approximately 17 bills that will impact our elections community, including the state board, the department, local registrars, electoral boards, as well as voters. Out of the 17 bills that were passed, there are about 4 pairs of identical bills, and I'm not going to go word for word in the summary, because I know we have a very busy agenda item, but we would like to highlight a few significant legislative changes. So first, for absentee voting, the General Assembly has passed voting absentee results by individual precinct. So we will no longer be reporting results by just the central absentee precinct in the locality. Although this bill is effective July 1, 2022, we obviously won't see this implemented until the November general election. As it pertains to campaigns and campaign finance, what will be very of interest to the board is that the maximum penalty for campaign finance disclosure violations has been increased from $10,000 to $25,000. So it's likely that you will see an amendment to stand by your ad policies and procedures in the future. The Department of Elections will also be required to review reports and records of campaign committees for statewide offices and a percentage of reports and records of campaign committees for all other offices. This bill is not effective until the 1st of 2024, so we do have a significant amount of time for that. As it pertains to election officials, one thing we do want to highlight that assistant registrars have been reclassified as deputy registrars in the Code of Virginia, and this highlights, their roles and responsibilities as deputy registrars. Now, they are to take the registrar and anything happens, and they really serve more as deputy than assistants. So we do want to highlight their hard work and happy that they have that reclassification in the code. Does not change their roles and responsibilities as it pertains to the code. As it pertains to FOIA, we will have to amend our electronic meeting policies because the General Assembly did pass legislation that amends the Freedom of Information Act as it pertains to meetings conducted through electronic means, and we do have a summary there in this document for you all later. We have updated, the General Assembly passed legislation regarding the precincts and polling places. So in the event that there is no suitable building that could be used for a polling place within a precinct or within 1 mile of the precinct boundary, localities are allowed to request a waiver from the Department of Elections to use a polling place outside of that 1 mile boundary. So the department is required to set standards and impose any conditions to allow that locality to administer an election in a polling place outside of the 1 mile boundary. And then lastly, they have General Assembly updated risk limiting audit policies and procedures. So they've enacted a bill that will change how we conduct risk limiting audits. There are 3 different effective dates in that bill. So we do have that summarized here in the summary. It will require the Department of Elections to conduct a work group just to assess how we will do risk limiting audits for statewide contests. And so that will be implemented. The work group has to be joined by July 31st, and then we have until October 22nd to provide a report to the board and to the General Assembly. And for voter registration, one thing we'll highlight is the State Registrar of Vital Records will transmit a weekly list of decedents to the Department of Elections. Previously, this list was provided monthly, so this just increases the frequency at which we receive these lists, and then the general registrars will remove anyone that needs to be removed promptly. And that's kind of a brief overview.
Okay, thank you. On the FOIA electronic meetings policy, that has an effective date of September 1, is that correct? So you'll be coming back to the board sometime in one of our meetings between now and then?
I may, or someone else may.
Yeah, you all staff.
I might not. But we will.
Understood. Do the members have any additional questions of Ms. Coles on any of these matters? Any member of the public wish to be heard? If not, thank you very much and for your concise report. The next item on our agenda is a proposed amendment to 1 VAC 20-70-40. Mr. Davenport.
Good afternoon, Chairman Brink. Good afternoon, members of the board. So this agenda item concerns a proposed amendment that ELECT is putting before you that would just beef up our current regulatory action on the pre-processing process for absentee ballots by mail. To give you a little background, so the 2021 General Assembly changed some of the rules for pre-processing. They amended 242709.1 of the Code of Virginia, and basically the new rule is that pre-processing becomes mandatory starting on the week before the election. This regulation would just take some instructions that we issued last year that were very successful and codify them formally in the regulation. You have the body of the regulation in front of you, but essentially the two sort of primary components are that we would require two pre-processing meetings to be held as part of this regulation. One would be held on the week before the election, on the Tuesday prior, and then one would be required for general registrars on either the Friday or Saturday before the election. The purpose of requiring those two meetings is to provide more instructions for the general registrars on exactly what to do to meet that code section, because the language is relatively vague. It says their pre-processing becomes mandatory the week before the election, but doesn't say how often, when, and where. And then the other objective would be to make sure we have absentee ballots pre-processed in time to make sure that our election results come out really clearly, that it's very obvious for as many voters as possible who they selected to vote for, so that we don't have any issues with data reporting or confusion for voters about who is ahead in an election to the degree that we're possible, that we're able to do so. Like I said, these were pretty similar to the instructions that we issued last year. They just weren't in regulatory form. The one big change is that last year we required a pre-processing meeting on the Saturday before the election. After our senior leadership spoke with some general registrars, it seemed that there would be a preference to have that meeting either on the Friday or the Saturday before the election. Our understanding is this won't have any significant, effect on reporting or how many ballots we're able to pre-process, so it seems like a pretty reasonable change. And like I said, otherwise, this will be very similar to the actual process we followed for the November 2021 general election, where we were very successful at results reporting. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do the members have any questions of Mr. Davenport on this regulatory proposal? Does any member of the public wish to be heard? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the board approve the proposed regulatory action.
Chairman Brink, I move the board approve the department's proposal for regulatory action regarding the pre-processing of absentee ballots.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Secretary LaCruz, call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon,
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, aye. Delegate Merrick,
Aye.
Ms. Chang. Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Davenport.
I look forward to seeing some of you on maybe Ashley's agenda.
Excellent. Our next item of business is certification of the NOINC poll pad version 2.5.8 and 3.0.1 versions. Ms. Hoyt-Stewart?
Hello, good afternoon. Yes, NOINC came in, brought in, there's two new versions, and the reason they're certifying two versions is because 2.5.8 is one kind of Apple poll pad, and the other one, 3.01, is a different kind of Apple poll pad. But Richmond City has the older poll pads, and if they would certify it as a 3.0.1 only, then Richmond City would have to buy all new electronic poll books. So instead of that, they are certifying both. We went through the whole process. They brought in, we had our mock election in Fairfax City, and confirmed that everything works and it's fine. So do you have any questions about the poll book?
Members have any questions of Ms. Hoyt-Stewart?
Could you tell us a little bit more about the procedure for the mock election?
Yeah, it's basically, it's similar to our testing, but we go through every criteria of our hard, we have in the standards, we have our, it's called our G section, and each item has to be clarified and validated that it happened. For example, like if you go in to check out a curbside voter, it has to show that it has a curbside voter, you know, and you go through and, for example, are you allowed to delete or change a voter after they voted? No, and each item, we have to go through each item. It's basically a very high caliber acceptance testing of all the criteria that they're required to pass.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? Do any members of the public wish to be heard on this certification proposal?
Yes, I would, please.
Yes, I have a comment. Who do you want to go first?
John.
Okay. Could you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Ned Jones.
Yes, sir.
How much time do we have? 3 minutes?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, you're about to certify the most vulnerable part of our election technological system, the electronic poll book. You need go no further than the March 31 letter to Commissioner Beals from SLI, I believe. In that letter, they state that these poll books cannot be certified. They're unable to mask or unmask passwords. They cannot be connected to a voting system, and there's a strong warning. It is also strongly recommended that strict configuration guidelines be applied to the jurisdiction to lock down the poll pad plus devices. We know from tech people that these are extremely easy to hack. They're connected to the cloud in early voting by off-the-shelf routers or hotspots that are easily hacked. You can go back to May of 2020, minutes from your own meeting, where the same comments were made about these no-ink electronic poll books. They're not being certified by your own records, and yet you're voting to certify them. And you know what? You can go all the way back to 2015 when you started talking about these e-poll books, and in your minutes from the December meeting, you had the same concerns then that have never been corrected. These e-poll books are connected to the internet through very vulnerable Wi-Fi networks that are set up for early voting. I watched as a poll worker, everybody was on a cell phone. These e-poll books can be accessed by a smartphone. And I urge you not to certify them. We have to find a better way that's much less vulnerable. Thank you.
I'd like to comment.
Commissioner Beals, are you in receipt of this gentleman's correspondence? All right.
I would be happy to come there anytime to discuss my concerns with you in person.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'd like to comment.
Part of the testing process is, and part of our criteria is that it can't connect to a voting system. Okay, the voting systems are not in the testing environment. However, there's no Wi-Fi connection with the voting systems. Our voting systems totally have no internet connectivity whatsoever. So even if there's no connectivity. The electronic poll books are certified to be locked down, and the reason they emphasize that is because they have to be whitelisted. They're connected through VPN, that they're so secure that they only talk to each other and they only talk to just one portal. No one can access it. In the last election, we did have an incident where people tried to break into a poll book in a precinct, which is a felony. And could not do it and could not access it because they are closed down. They are locked down. One of the localities, when they set up their electronic poll books for the connectivity, they make sure that they follow every protocol that the security division gives them. So that is not a concern. They are not hackable. No Ink does use ePulse, which is their software, but that is locked down too. But No Ink is used across the whole state of Indiana, for example, and it actually connects into their state voter registration system. So here, we do not have it connect to our voter registration system. We only have it connect to just the poll books. We've had no, and we've used poll books now for 3 years. We've had no incidents, except for the one this last year was trying to hack into the system and failed 4 times.
Mr. Chairman.
With all due respect, if you read the March 31
Thank you.
letter.
One moment, please. Dr. Urbano?
Let me ask the dummy question. These are used for early in-person voting,
Right.
and when they are used for early in-person voting, they are not connected to the internet or vulnerable in any way to...
The Knowinks connects to their ePulse, and their ePulse is locked into their connectivity. It's not the internet, it's their ePulse. It's their software. But they are connected to talk to that software. That's how Knowink operates.
That software is certified by our IT people.
Okay. Yeah, and Knowink is, all throughout the whole country. They have a solid reputation of locking down their system.
With all due respect, they're having issues.
So, sorry, I just wanted to clarify. So what you're saying is that someone could not use their cell phone to try to get onto the system? I mean, I've seen these used in person. That's why I was just wondering. I think a lot of people haven't. So.
Right, and like when you walk into any public site, it's going to show you that there's Wi-Fi out there, but you can't connect to it.
Right.
When you're locked down and you're secure and you're limited, and we whitelist IP addresses, everything is locked down and secure.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
Yes.
Yes, we were getting to you.
Sorry, that was actually Mr. Jones. Next up is I believe it's Chris Brim.
Hi.
All right.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, hi. My name is Christine Brim. I'm with Fairfax County Republican Committee Election Integrity Working Group. And I, too, want to raise issues about Knowink. I think further due diligence is required. We appreciate that SLI has done the test this year of whatever extent they did, but in 2020, they did raise issues which have not been addressed in your 2022 report, other than to simply repeat them. One is the failure to mask passwords. That's in the letter. The other is the issue which SLI itself raises about connectivity. I wanted to say, in Fairfax, the poll pads were sent home with 247 chiefs on the Sunday prior to the November 2nd election, and they connected to download the updated Veris voter registration polls using their home networks and the local hotspot. So I just think that when we look at cases, when we look at actual implementation of this across the state, we also know that security is an issue in multiple counties, so much so that it's been raised as an issue. In fact, they've got a college intern program where college interns in computer security have been specially trained. And I think this is a good program, but it shows the lack of resources and it shows the need that those interns are going out, I believe, this summer or this spring to work with some localities to help them improve their security. To simply say that guidelines should be issued does not close the loop in terms of due diligence by elect to make sure that local registrars and electoral boards are actually doing the kind of local practices that are needed on a network connectivity basis to implement Knowink properly. Couple more points. One, source code discrepancies have been raised and a source code assessment is mentioned in the record. We are happy to provide multiple links to other studies that have been done, particularly California in 2019 and 2020 did a very good source code assessment of Knowink. They found a number of discrepancies, and then the last assessment in 2020 found, I believe, 8 vulnerabilities. Since that source code study is mentioned, we think due diligence recommends that you find out what discrepancies or vulnerabilities were identified in this most recent assessment. I don't think it can just be black boxed. And finally, the ePulse network is reliant on multiple kinds of technology itself. Again, don't just kind of separate it out and treat it as de facto okay. Each of those components that make up the ePulse network have their own identified vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities do not mean that something is being hacked, but it does mean the potential is there. And I think you have an obligation to make sure that every step of this entire network chain, you're on top of what potential risks would be, and you're mitigating them. You may mitigate them technically, you may mitigate them through planning.
Thank you.
Sorry, was that my buzzer? That's my hook to go off stage.
I apologize for the trumpets.
I just am suggesting we would be happy to send a memo to elect, just enumerating these. I think there is further due diligence needed, and I think particularly guidance and help to do the local networking appropriately is really important. When we're sending 247 of these pads home with our chiefs, who may or may not have the appropriate training to do it correctly, I think we need to make sure, and that's in Fairfax, we need to make sure that we're really following this through.
Thank you, Ms. Brim. Are there any additional members of the public who wish to be heard?
I have no other public comment here.
Jeffrey Avey at Fairfax County Public Committee Election Integrity Working Group. I work very close with Ms. Christine Brin. The couple of things I heard, so just with all due respect, the correction to the understanding of our poll pads, they were explained to me last year and during last election that they were getting regular updates to Barris. Okay, so that's one thing. So, that's, and the other thing is, I've got about 36 years in the counterintelligence, with DOD as uniform for a while, and I was looking at our adversaries and how they were, taking our business and taking us to lunch, and they're still doing it. And I had a very nice lady tell me, she's in a position of authority, we have a casual conversation. She was saying that, we have to get with the 21st century, get this in for, technology going so we can have fast information. It was a flashback to about 1999 when I had those similar conversations with people. And we were still getting ripped off then, but we just didn't have as much access to all of our crown jewels as we do now. So I'm hearing testimonial about how great the knowing pad is. No, with all due respect, but unfortunately we need pros coming in, and they need to be third-party pros that all parties trust, and we need to get into that habit, because we just simply can't have testimonials of somebody who's not technically proficient being sold how great a piece of technology is. We all have our children, our grandchildren telling us how great an app is. We download it and we get frustrated because it's not really as good as it says. Spend a lot of time wasting our time on it. We just introduced also a bunch of vulnerabilities. There's no need to get a lot of technology. It's just testimonials aren't working. We need to get scientific about how we prove whether technology is going to do us a favor or our adversaries a favor. So that's all.
Thank you, sir.
And as you know, we have the VISTL, which is the Certified Voting Technology Laboratory, Testing Laboratory representatives here, and they confirm and they write all the documentation and they confirm and they go over everything for us. So it just isn't us and at elect reviewing this. This is a representative from there's 2 certified voting VISTLs, and this is one of them. And so that's why we bring them in to make sure. And we looked at the reports, they were talking about the source code. All of those have been mitigated in the reports. And as far as the connectivity, again, we have in our regulations, the counties and localities who have satellite locations have to go through a process and verify with our regulations that they have tested and they have secured their connectivity as required. Downloading, they're only going to do any downloading of any information is going to be in the evening and the morning to update the files, but not during the day. They do not connect to the Barris at all.
Thank you. Members have any additional comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, could I ask just one? The items they mentioned in the certifications, like passwords,
right.
and then the the lockdown, making sure, what have we done to mitigate that on our end to make, because my issue is, we got 130-some things out there, and everybody's sort of doing their own thing, and how do we know that people are doing what they're supposed to do?
Well, they certified it as if due to the regulations, there's only about 19 that have satellite locations out of the 133. So we are on top of all that, and we have a portal in our secure software where they have to respond and give us that information and sign off and attest that they have done that. As far as the masking and unmasking the password, that we gave that an exception because with the Apple product, they can't unmask. Okay, they can only mask. Okay, so our choice was to have masking and unmasking in our standards. But they do not, the only unmasking is on the first letter, they can see it before they put the second letter in, but it's literally masked. It's just any kind of, like a regular masking. It does not have the option of unmasking.
The first lesson I learned in accounting was that figures don't lie, but liars figure. So we gotta make sure people are doing what they're supposed, and our equipment is doing what it's supposed to do. This certification letter to me, it's sort of anemic, but it's still, I guess it's saying that they certified it. I read.
Right.
I don't know, but that was my question. What can we do to mitigate that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Dr. O'Bannon.
So I think Ms. Beal's new IT person may be beginning to sweat. Here's my question. I recall like 2 or 3 years ago, we actually put together a huge work group and dumped a bunch of regulations on the GRs and the localities that included a lot of cyber. Right. I was in some of those meetings.
Right.
And I guess Vistal, which you say is what is their relationship to the vendors? Is there any relationship?
No, they are certified by the Election Assistance Commission on the federal level. They certify the Vistals. Okay, so the Vistals actually work for the EAC mostly, but then they certify for the EAC. For example, now poll books are not certified at the EAC level because they're not required to. They're not voting systems.
But you're comfortable they are arm's length from the vendors?
I'm sorry?
You're comfortable that they are arm's length from the vendors?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm inclined to approve this, but I'm also inclined to not just stop, that we get some more information and try to address some of the concerns from the Fairfax folks. Make me feel better if some good IT people looked at this again, or at least tried to.
The reason they certified the new version, they're already certified to 2.5.1, but they're certified to new positions because they have spatial safety, the security mechanisms that they build into the new certifications to improve the security, to keep improving it as they go along. And that's why they were requesting to get certified to this new version before the election, so it'd be actually more secure. As you know, with security, you have to patch all the time. You always have to figure out what's the next vulnerability, if there is, and try to patch to that. And, so that's what they're trying to ensure, and I can get back to you with exactly what these new changes meant, but they were mostly for security.
Can
you identify the speakers?
Sure. This is John O'Bannon. I'm the vice chairman. I guess my question would be to our new commissioner, would you be comfortable, say, in the next month or two, sort of giving us an update on this question that's been raised, and maybe?
I would be comfortable either way. If you want to delay a month, I would be comfortable with that, whatever your comfort level is.
Is there any time restriction going forward?
Right. If we delay and we don't approve this, then they can't use this version improvement for the June election, because May 1st or May 4th is when early voting starts. Mm-hmm. So then they would not be able to use this new, really more secure version of the product.
I had a question. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you said. So are you saying Richmond only has the old version, or okay, so they don't have both?
No, it's a new certification, all of them have 2.5.1 right now. But in order to go forward, the Richmond would be going to 2.5.8, and the rest of them would be going to 3.0.1.
Okay.
So this would have an impact on the city of Richmond's ability to
Fairfax, all of them that have no ink. We have, I can't remember exactly how many localities, but it's like probably 20, 30 that have no ink as their electronic poll books. And it would impact the ones that are doing early voting, because this is about, however, they can still use the 251, which has connectivity, but this one has more security built into it. And Fairfax is one of the top ones with the most, and I'm trying to think of Richmond, obviously.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Bannon.
prepared to accept the motion.
I am if the commissioner and you are clear on the data.
What I'm going to say?
That's right, on what it is you're.
So I would move that we accept the update and approve these, and also request our commissioner to report back to us on the specific issues that have been raised in the next 1 to 2 meetings, because there is no time specific on that, or within the next 3 months.
And could we, I know that the Fairfax Republican Working Group, if they were going to submit their letter, could they do it by the next meeting? Does that give you all enough time? Because I would be interested in seeing that. I think Ms. Brim suggested. Okay.
Yes,
All
we
right.
can.
There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board certify the referenced equipment and that the commissioner report back on concerns raised by the vice chairman. Secretary LaCruz, will you call the roll?
Chairman Brink?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Merrick?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Hoyt-Stewart. Our next item of business is the drawing for candidate ballot order for the June 21, 2022 primaries. Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Generally, candidate order on ballots for primaries is determined by priority of time of filing. However, if candidates file simultaneously for an office, that order is determined by the board by lot. Staff recommends that the board determine by lot and then certify the ballot order of candidates on the ballot for the primary elections on June 21st, 2022, as we have had 3 offices that have simultaneous filing. Mr. Chairman, I have my implement here. I'm ready to.
All right.
That drawing at your
So the 3 drawings to be done are the 2nd District Republican primary for House of Representatives, 7th District Republican primary for the House of Representatives, and 8th District Democratic primary for the House of Representatives, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Why don't we proceed with 2nd District? Each of these is done separately, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right.
So what I'll do is I'll announce the candidate name, and I'll put that candidate name in one of these, and then we'll conduct the drawing.
All right.
And do you want to show it before you put it in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We heard you were taking magician lessons.
They're not going to. All right, first candidate name is Andrew Bond. Jerome Bell. Tommy Altman. And Jen Kagan. Chairman, I'll let you determine the members.
All right, I'll do number 1.
Do you want to do them all, or
No.
one at a time?
No. One at a time.
Yes, sir.
All right, Jerome Bell.
Andrew Bond.
Tommy Alton. Better be Keegan. And in fact, it is.
Very good. All right, so that's 2nd District Republican primary.
Yes, sir.
Next up is 7th District Republican primary, and we have 5 candidates for that.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Well, it is now.
Oh.
It's Fredericksburg and around there.
Oh, okay.
You know, it was.
Is that, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, no, we were
Side
just talking.
First candidate I have is Gina Ciarcia. Crystal Vanek. Bryce Reeves. Derek Anderson. David Ross.
Okay. And with 5, why don't you start down at Ms. Chang and just work all the way down the table?
Yes, sir. Gina Ciarcia.
Yes.
Derek Anderson. Just need to type.
David Ross. Don't put it back in the bowl.
Yes, sir.
Crystal L. Vanek.
I hope it's Bryce Reed. Yep, Bryce Reed.
All right, Mr. Chairman, the last office we have is for 8th District Democrats.
Correct.
Candidate is Victoria Vera Singh. And Donald Byer.
When you have Delegate Merrick's and Ms. Chang do these.
Yes, sir.
Victoria Harrison.
Very good. So that completes the candidate ballot order. Next, we'll proceed with the drawing for party ballot order.
I believe we need a motion on the
Oh,
determination, sir.
oh, very good.
Move approval of the respective orders as drawn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board certify the determinations by lot of the order of candidates on the ballot for primary elections to be held on June 21, 2022. Will the secretary call the roll?
Chairman Brink?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Mayor?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Mr. Saunders, on to party order on the ballot for general and special elections. Last week, I distributed to the members the summary of an academic study that suggested that ballot order had a perceptible impact on outcome. Given that information, it seemed to me that frequent realignment of ballot order would lessen that impact. Mr. Saunders and I discussed this matter earlier this week. Setting the ballot order today for elections between April 30 and January 31, 2023 would facilitate ballot preparation through the 2022 general election and any special elections that might result from vacancies that ensue from that election. Do the members have any questions or comments about the party ballot order? Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this matter? If not, let's proceed on to the drawing for party ballot order.
Yes, sir. Democratic Party?
Can I ask just one quick question?
Dr. O'Bannon.
Are we changing anything?
I'm sorry?
What is the impetus of,
Well, we had previously made a drawing up until March 31st, or up until April 30th. And what this does is simply does ballot order for the period from now through January 31st, 2023.
We want to draw it 3 times.
so, is the department all right with that?
Yes, sir, yes.
So, just, let me ask the next dumb question. If you do these party drawings, it would seem to me that eventually it's going to be 50-50 either way.
I'm not a stats person, but I think you're right.
So then I won't answer the next question is why you want to do this.
I thought we had independents also. Do we have 3 parties?
I'm sorry?
Sounds good.
Republican, Democrat, and independent? No, just 2 parties?
Just two recognized parties for this purpose. Is that correct, Mr. Lee?
I withdraw the question.
All right, Mr. Chairman. Democratic Party? And Republican Party?
I'll have Dr. O'Bannon draw first.
It's the Democratic Party.
Okay. Ms. Chang, will you draw the second?
I wonder about this one too. I don't have real glasses, I can't tell the other party.
All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Saunders. Okay, our final order of business on the agenda today is a request for a candidate filing extension.
I believe we need to make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion. I move that the board certify the determination by lot of the ballot order for all general and special elections being held from April 30th, 2022 through January 31st, 2023.
Is there a second? Second. Been moved and seconded that the board certify the determination. Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink,
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon,
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, aye. Delegate Barrett,
Aye.
Ms. Jang.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. As I said, before I got ahead of myself, the final order of business on the agenda today is a request for a candidate filing extension under section 24-2-503 of the code. Mr. Nichols.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for your time today. We have received, as we have in the past, an incident where a candidate failed to file a certificate of candidate qualification by the deadline and is requesting an extension under 503 from the board to be able to file that within 10 days of the extension. This situation is a little unique, and I don't believe it poses a set of circumstances the board has seen before. In this one, the candidate filed a 501 prior to the deadline, but put on the form that it was for the November 8th, 2022 election, and then he became a candidate in the primary, and so that made the general registrar a little nervous. The general registrar is the filing officer for this one. So the general registrar contacted the candidate after the filing deadline and said, this can't be accepted because it's for the November election and not for the primary. And so the candidate is just asking for an extension. He has already filled out and submitted a new form that does indicate the primary. Of course, that did happen after the deadline occurred, and so he's asking for an extension to be able to file that. In this particular circumstance, it's a city council race. With this candidate, there are a total of 5, and it's a vote for 3 office. And as far as we know, there are no other candidates outstanding who would be subject to the extension if it were to be granted.
Because under the code, if we were to approve the extension for this individual, it would apply to all individuals who are similarly situated. A couple of questions. This was filed with the registrar of the city of Roanoke?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know on what date?
I don't know. But we do have, my understanding is that the candidate, Mr. Jackson, was planning to be attending virtually.
All right. Okay. Do members have any questions of Mr. Nichols?
I had one. What, did you say no one else has failed to file their paperwork on time? Does he have additional candidates running against him who filed things?
So, yeah, it's an office where you're voting for 3, and with his name, there are a total of 5 candidates.
Oh, okay.
For that office.
I think I
Dr.
asked
Banner.
Mr. Nichols this question. Do we have a history here, 401, 501s, and 511s, and this has not been before us before. This is different.
That's correct.
We won't be setting or breaking any precedents, or we may be setting one, but it doesn't rise to that same level as we've dealt with in the past.
It is a different set of circumstances than you've seen in the past, yes.
Thank you.
Question. So you said 5 candidates, and are they for the primary or the?
Yes, for the primary.
The primary is like 3, then 3 of them will participate in the November general election, is that?
Yes.
Why did City of Roanoke accept the application if they see it's November general election, not a primary, if this was required?
So I can't necessarily speak to that specifically. However, what I can tell you is that we have seen those sorts of cases with the department before, where a candidate files a certificate of candidate qualification and puts on there for the November election, and then the party calls for a primary after they've already submitted that form. So that could potentially be the circumstance here, but I don't know because I don't know those details of those times of when they filed, when the filing came in, when the primary was called.
One more question. When did he file the application?
That was my question also.
March 15th, it's in this
March
letter?
15th, it's in the letter.
March 15th, yes.
March 15th. The deadline is?
April 7th.
So there are 2 weeks between the filing and the deadline. Nobody look at that, say, this is, I mean, is that standard practice? That's what I'm trying to find out.
That would be a question for the local general registrar, since they are the filing officer for that.
I don't know that we've ever had a candidate who's filed their paperwork early. You know, that we have, I don't mean in general, but like typically there's an issue where they're late or they haven't filed it at all. So this really is the first time that at least this board since 2019 has seen this.
Mhm.
Just a comment.
All right. Additional questions or comments from the board? Mr. Jackson? Are you,
Welcome.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Brink, and to the Vice Chair, Secretary, and the rest of the members of this prestigious board. Thank you so much for your time, your consideration. This is my first time being among this particular group, and I have certainly learned a lot about what you all do through the process of what you all have accomplished on today. I understand this is a very different situation, and I humbly ask that you would give me this extension, seeing as though I did submit my paperwork on the 15th of March, and there was some time for that to be discovered that I had checked the wrong box inadvertently. But once I did submit with the party, I guess there was a comparison of documents to realize the information was incorrect. However, I did not receive that notice until yesterday evening after 5 p.m., which was, of course, after the deadline. And so I would humbly ask, please, if you all could grant me that extension. So I have submitted the new piece of paperwork. It has been notarized and is official. I've submitted that to the registrar's office, but of course, in order for that to become valid, I would need the permission from this board to run.
Okay. Mr. Jackson, could you tell me when the party chose to proceed by primary?
It was on the chair. That's the first day that we're allowed to tell the state board that we're going to do.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Pretty in the chair of the Roanoke City Democratic Committee. The first day that we had the opportunity, we notified the board that we were going to correct primary.
What date was that?
That's February.
All right, thank you. Members have any questions of Mr. Jackson? And any other member of the public wish to be heard on this request? If not, we proceed by motion. Hearing no such motion, we will proceed with the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Before we go into closed session to receive the advice of counsel, the board will receive public comment. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on a matter not on today's agenda?
Excuse me. So first, Mr. Jason Corwin, he wanted to speak during another agenda item previously, but I had the chat closed. So he would like to speak now if he's able to. It was regarding Danny, agenda item, the proposed amendment.
Okay, and he was unable to speak
At that time.
due to closed chat.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Corwin?
Good afternoon, Chairman Brink, State Board of Election members. I was just going to say during y'all's proposed thing, I'm kind of a day late, $1 short since it's already passed, but making a mandatory second meeting on a Saturday or Friday for pre-processing does not make a lot of sense for a lot of localities, especially small ones, because we finish our pre-processing way ahead of time, and then I've got to pay a group of people to come in on a Saturday or a Friday, and I have to pay them regardless of whether they do any work because they drive out to the office, we have the meeting, we close the meeting, we shut everything down. So that was just going to be my 2 cents on it. Everything else I was great with. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Except for what we did.
He's the registrar from where?
You're the registrar in?
I'm sorry, I'm the registrar from Mecklenburg County.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Corwin. As we proceed, we'll try to address the concerns that you've raised, and I'd ask the department to look at it and see if some adjustment can be made to meet those concerns.
I appreciate it. I'm on actually the work group that's helping to develop the policy and a guidebook for pre-processing right now, and it came up in one of our discussions.
Okay. All right.
But y'all have a wonderful day, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, just sorry, I know this is a little out of order because we're right back, but I was going to say we're happy to work with our registrars and moving forward. If we find that this is ineffective, we're, of course, we'll come back and do a proposed amendment as necessary.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Additional members of the public?
Next up, we have Tom Reynolds.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you for hearing me. I am the Secretary of the Nottoway County Board of Elections. And I come with a heavy heart today having to share some concerns, some complaints, and some allegations from citizens who have approached me. There are also other folks here from Nottoway County who may wish to speak as well. I'm speaking in a secretary's voice here. I'll try to keep it to bullet points. There are also binders or folders that were left for each board member in the commission with the details of these concerns and allegations. April of 22, Nottoway Electoral Board Chair Sarah Allen and Vice Chair May Tucker voted not to go into closed session to discuss pending legal action against the board. At the end of the meeting, Chair Allen read 2 motions rejecting the claims of the plaintiff's attorneys. Allen then proceeded to name the plaintiffs and then read a list of the plaintiff's claims for damages in open session. April of 22, Chair Sarah Allen and Vice Chair voted not to go into closed session to discuss numerous complaints regarding past bad behavior and code violations by 2 nominees for officers of elections. NEB allowed a board member and an officer of election to go into a voting machine the night before the November election in 2018 was the question at issue. The current chair and the vice chair refused to participate in a closed session in April of 2022 once these allegations came forward to me. A former board secretary had the locks changed on the registrar's building and the secure areas of the registrar's office. The secretary subsequently went into the secure areas when the registrar's office was closed with the key that he obtained during the lock change. A former NEB secretary arranged and allowed for shredding of many documents from the registrar's office in 2021 without the authorization of the Library of Virginia. The NEB allowed campaigning and allowed the Democratic Party to give away free lunches at the registrar's office during the Sunday voting event in 2021. NEB board members participated. A former board member opened sealed boxes of election documents legally stored in the registrar's office, then called in the press and allowed photographs. And it was all over the newspaper. The NEB allowed board members Sarah Allen and Carolyn Davis to protest and disrupt voting during the 2020 general election. The Democratic Party chair was also allowed to protest. The board members listed were also handing out campaign literature within the 40-foot line. They were handing out vanilla-colored sample ballots. And I'm going to stop right there. But in closing, I ask that the State Board of Elections investigate these allegations, and the full letter is in the package that we left, of misconduct, malfeasance, illegal activities, and potential civil violations. I request that the State Board pursue resources to do so, including and up to the State Attorney General's office. We cannot do this alone. We absolutely need some help. We have tried for years and years and have failed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And just to follow up, all the information that you provided verbally here is in the packets?
It is.
All right.
As well as some of the complaint letters from citizens.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Next up, we have Dana Lynn, or Diane Lynn? Diana Lynn. Okay, Diana Lynn, sorry about that. Hi, my name is Diana Lynn Wilkins Mitchell. I came here, as I did last year, to speak with you, only I did it on Zoom. So I came in person this year, hoping to be more effective. Over the last year, I've spent countless hours trying to call attention to the many issues surrounding the Nottoway County Electoral Board. Thankfully, now I have more help. Once before I spoke to you, as I said, via a Zoom call, and I asked for your help in order to preserve the integrity of the elections process. I'm a citizen. I do not sit on an electoral board. I own a business. I'm a veteran. I'm a mom. I'm not here for any other reason other than it's a serious issue and I need your help. In April of last year, this board confirmed the many irregularities, disputes, and the failure of the Nottoway Board to discharge their duties in a collegial, respectful, and nonpartisan manner, which, as you stated, prevented the board from serving our community in an efficient and transparent electoral process. The mandated training was not attended by all members. The partisan behavior continues, the illicit practices continue, and the citizens of Nottoway County remain victimized. I stand before you today asking again for your immediate assistance. I ask that you begin the process by providing oversight in the form of a state representative located in the office of the Registrar for Nottoway County. I also ask that you cancel the existing contract that has been given to Nan Lambert as a trainer at the cost of $50 an hour for our registrar. In addition, I ask that considering the many grievous infractions that have been identified, that you remove one or more of the existing electoral board members and the current registrar in order to preserve the integrity of our county's elections. Since losing our previous registrar, Angela Stewart, the procedures, policies, and deadlines have not been upheld. Intimidation, threats, willfully ignoring codes, policies, and procedures are occurring daily to the detriment of the elections process. Election integrity has been eradicated in order to meet the whims of a few. Ego has replaced competency. It is within your power to restore an efficient and transparent electoral process and thereby protect the rights of our citizens. I ask you to enlist the help of the Attorney General's office. Records have been destroyed. People have been removed from their jobs without cause. Ballot boxes have been opened, all in an effort to push an unknown agenda, an agenda that has thus far proven to be contrary to the very core of fair and free elections, contrary to our rights as citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Again, I beg you, we need the proper authorities within the Commonwealth of Virginia to take immediate and definitive action in remedy of these infractions. I can't do it anymore. I don't know what else to do. I have beat my head against the wall. Please help.
Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Are there additional members of the public who wish to be heard?
Next up, we have Erwin Abbott.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name's Erwin Abbott. Most everybody knows me as Sonny. I stand here before you as a former secretary of the Nottoway County Electoral Board. There have been 3 secretaries since my resignation. I take seriously the oath that I took that said to faithfully and impartially discharge all duties. That's nigh on to impossible in Nottoway County right now. We have a registrar that has, I'll call it, and be kind, minimal experience as a registrar. He has a trainer that has been with him for approximately 3 months. The 2 previous speakers gave specific details and accounts. You will find my name on some of those documents in that packet. I can only implore you to do what's right, to faithfully and impartially do your duty. Bring the appropriate authorities to Nottoway County. Station someone there. Determine what's wrong. Find out if what was spoken here by those 2 is correct. And if it is, take the appropriate action necessary. Yes, there will be lawsuits. I'm not here to defend or to suggest that you should do something to support those. The courts will take care of those. What needs to happen are fair and free elections. If something doesn't happen, you will know, because the primary that happens in June in Nottoway will be a disaster. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, sir. Could you tell me what dates you served on the electoral board?
I resigned in February of '21.
You said there have been 3 secretaries since then?
There have been 3 since then.
Right. And when did you come on?
I don't recall when I was officially appointed. I was probably there close to 10 to 12 months.
Okay. Thank you for coming up.
Next up, I have Barbara Tabb.
Yes, I didn't mean I need to speak, but I will, but not, I will. I would like to say that there was a packet of information from Nottoway County that was delivered to the Attorney General's office back in 2021 that these folks put carefully together. I know that because I personally delivered it both to the department and to the Attorney General's representative that we had at that point. This has been an ongoing disaster. And I will tell you, I performed the training down there. Their problems are not from a lack of training, it's from they don't care. It doesn't matter. They can be trained once a week for the rest of their lives, and it's not the agenda that we've got. So I can't help but add to their concerns. We need to do something. This cannot continue the way it is. It's just impossible to conduct an election.
Thank you, Ms. Tabb.
Next up, we have Luke Purdy.
That is me. My comments are within 3 minutes, but I have 7 copies for the members of the table to make it easier to follow. If you wait to start, so right now. Chairman Brink, Vice Chair O'Bannon, Secretary LaCruz, Ms. Chang, and Delegate Merrick. My name is Luke Purdy, and I come before you in my capacity as Chair of the Roanoke City Democratic Committee. Last night, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 24.2-536, I submitted written notification that my committee had adopted a direct primary to fill the remainder of an unexpired term on Roanoke City Council. This section of code states that whenever, by reason of the removal of the incumbent, the vacancy occurs in the legal office less than 75, but more than 45 days before the regular date of the primary, the properly constituted party authorities may permit the filing of declarations and petitions of candidacy for nomination for that office in the primary. This criteria was met on April 8th due to the removal of the incumbent, Robert L. Jeffrey Jr., where a vacancy still occurs to this day. 2 years ago, when the pandemic first began, the incumbent was nominated in a closed party process where only 77 people were given the opportunity to select their nominee due to COVID-19. Consequently, Roanoke City voters were deprived of the right to vote for their candidate of choice. This was recognized last night. While the circumstances that exist in 24.2-536 are quote-unquote rare, as referenced in the 2022 deadline calendar developed by this department, the circumstances are met with the facts that they stand today. To comply with the code, legal notice of the vacancy and right to file for the Democratic nomination has already been paid for and is set to begin printing tomorrow in the Roanoke Times. While the code allows for submission of the primary method up to 46 days and party certification of candidates 36 days before the primary, such deadlines are impractical for the party and the Commonwealth. The section has not been updated since 2010, long before 45-day early voting was enacted. The filing deadline has been set for 14 days prior to the start of early voting to allow for prompt certification of the candidates, and this was intentionally done to preserve taxpayer dollars when printing official ballots. Given how severely limited the nomination process was 2 years ago and the criteria of 24.2-536 being met, the direct primary must be held. An update to 24.2-509 reads in part, the method of nomination shall not be selected if such method will have the practical effect of excluding participation in the nominating process by qualified voters who are otherwise eligible to participate. Chairman Brink, Vice Chair O'Bannon, Secretary LaCruz, Ms. Chang, and Delegate Merrick, I humbly request that the State Board take no action that would prohibit otherwise qualified voters from participating in this newly adopted primary set for June 21st. Thank you for your time, and I can take questions or any of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Purdy.
That was all that I had on my list, but I do believe
came before you all in the March meeting and requested that you all take a look at the Perez handbook hyperlinks, because many of them were not working. I'm here today to say thank you. Staff worked very diligently, thanks Paul, to have them all and now work in order, and it is very much appreciated. Also, in that same meeting, there was a comment made about costs associated with types of voter information lists that are available through Client Services on your webpage. And that got me thinking. I'm a homework kind of person, and I went out and found on NCSL's webpage a terrific 11-page document that I'd like to share with you all, just the front page to identify it, where you can find it on the webpage, and then on the back of the single-page document I'm going to share with you all, I'm going to give it to the secretary if that's permissible. And that gives you the 50 states plus DC in terms of what the costs are on average for that particular state, whether or not it's open, mixed, or restricted access to the information. And I just wanted to point out that out of, there are 31 states today, as of, I'll be qualified, end of October 2020 is when this report was written. So take that into consideration. Out of the 31 states have open access to your information, albeit some is still restricted, like Social Security, some of the birthdays, et cetera. The average cost for them is just over $2,700, and the median cost is $50. Out of the 16 states that have a mixed access, if you will, and Virginia falls into that category, the average cost is about $2,300. Median, again, just over $800. Virginia, out of the 16, is the third most expensive, and they have cited a price estimate of $5,000. So again, in its own classification of mixed in terms of who has access, Virginia is on the very high side of cost that it reasonably assigns to provide the information to whoever is requesting it. And then the last four states are on the restricted. Their average cost, interestingly enough, is just under $700, and the median is just over $300. So again, just wanted to share this information with you all, and to please ask that you all consider looking at what would be considered reasonable costs that are associated with providing data to qualified individuals, organizations, candidacies, et cetera, under the code, that brings us more in line with our sister states, if you will, for future requests down the road. So that was my point of coming today. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak. Mr. Chairman, as always, Vice Chair, good to see you all, and thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Hogue.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask the department to take a look at the material that you've forwarded, and we'll see where we go from there. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the State Board of Elections in Clarabelle, Wheeler, and I have sat where you sit today. And I would like to reinforce, pile on what was said about Nottoway County. To say that what's happened in Nottoway County over the last several years is we need the attorney up front. Is beyond an egregious violation of the principles of free, fair, safe, and legal elections. There is nothing in Nottoway County that's legal. It's not even safe. The three people from Nottoway County who spoke and provided written information, I invite you to give this your most serious consideration. There was a massive takeover of an elections office that began years ago. And it really, if you'll excuse me for saying so, hit the fan in
2020 and 2021. What has happened down there is criminal. I'm not an attorney, but I will tell you, when the previous board heard the problems in Hopewell, we were aghast. And the three of us stood in, as my former business partner would say, violent agreement that something needed to be done in Hopewell. And we sent letters to the court, and the court intervened, and the registrar and 2 electoral board members were removed. I implore the 5 of you to take action in Nottoway, to get the Attorney General, the State Police Department to investigate, to look at the film that has been taken of elected boards, to look at the incredible expenditures of money that have been fostered on the people of Nottoway County. But this must stop. We cannot have local elections run by mob rule. I think everybody in this room would agree to that. So please read the information that was given to you. I would also tell you that I suspect that all 3 of these people from Nottoway would be happy to meet with any one of you at any time, including the commissioner. I was at the same training session that the former Virginia Electoral Board Association member chairman, Barbara Tabb, and I, and the vice chair, John Nunaway, we're all in that same room teaching. And I can tell you that the person who was the secretary or chairman of the electoral board was on her laptop, not paying attention to the teaching. And the meeting was held there for the specific reason that we felt we needed to teach as much as we could.
Ms. Wheeler, can you wrap up?
Yes, sir. I apologize for going on, but I do hope you will give this your most serious attention.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler.
This gentleman here.
Mr. Latham?
Hi, the gentleman? Yes.
Not totally work related, but I had seemed kind of disappointed about it, but I'm glad also that Ms. LaCruz was recently elected to be a judge, and I have really enjoyed, I'm the registrar of New York County, by the way, so I'm not a stalker. I professionally follow what they do. So Ms. LaCruz has been a real asset to the election community. She's been, from everything I see, just a real asset to the legal community. And I've been really appreciative of having her on this board and seeing her act and represent the citizens of the state. And so I don't know when your last meeting is, but I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. It's today. We were gonna say that last, but thank you.
I was going to give Secretary LaCruz the opportunity to give her valedictory speech later in the day, but since Mr. Latham has jumped the gun on us.
Well, I was called a gentleman.
Ms. LaCruz, do you want to say anything right now?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for your comments. Like Walt said, I'm starting May 1. So I have 1 more week of closing up my law practice, which has been very swift. And then I have 1 week of judge training in Richmond, so I'll be back here, but you all won't be meeting. And then I start May 1. I did want to thank several people, and I realize that most of them are not here, but the record should reflect. I want to say thank you to Commissioner Piper, our Deputy Commissioner Bowman, James Heo, Gary Ellis, Ariel Schneider, Dave Nichols, hoping he'll let me try out his hoverboard since I'm no longer on the board after today. Ms. Walker, who's I believe upstairs, Ms. Alexander, the great staff from the AG's office who, if you haven't been involved in, kind of election law, it's very complicated. And, we had great staff who kind of came in and invited us up very early on. Carol Lewis and Heather Hayes Lockerman, who are no longer with us, the great GR and EB staff who came to my office right before the first meeting. They invited me to Williamsburg to a buffet. Pre-COVID, it was great. That was Mr. Latham, Ms. Tab, Ms. Robbins as well, and our my local, I think Ms. Isles is on the line, Norfolk Electoral Board members and General Registrar, as well as the IT staff who have been very helpful, I think, through this process, as well as some members of the media who I think were very objective in their posts, Mr. Ruban, and Ms. Hankerson as well. But thank you very much. So I might have left a few people out, but I think those are, the people who've made this process, which is, can be really difficult, very, very kind of a smooth transition for me. Thank you.
I just want to say I received the news of Secretary LaCruz's elevation to the bench with profoundly mixed feelings. It's wonderful news for Norfolk, for the bench, wonderful news for her, and bad news for this board. 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago when we came on, I noted that both Secretary LaCruz and I were graduates of the College of William and Mary's Law School, but that's where our legal careers diverge. I've been telling people for 40-plus years that I'm a lawyer, but not much of one. And she, on the other hand, has demonstrated both in her practice and also in her service on the board the kind of analytical mind, the kind of push for consistency and fairness that is the best part of the legal profession. And so, as I said, it's good news for the Commonwealth, good news for individuals who may come to appear before her, but I, for one, and the rest of the board, I'm certain, are going to miss her wise counsel. So, thank you.
Thank you.
If it would please the board, I would like to make a comment regarding earlier Jamal Jackson, where their motion was made. I tried not to speak up because as the Democratic City Chair, it's my duty not to take favoritism over any candidate. However, with first-hand knowledge of it, let's one fact entered into the record. If it would please the board, otherwise.
With the understanding that you've spoken already, if you can address us very briefly.
While the party did submit for a primary earlier, the certification of signed order for a primary was not sent out of here from the previous commissioner until March 9th, and was likely published in general circulation in our locality at a later point in time, where the general registrar cannot be here today, and that we don't have all of the facts of the case. Frankly, I'm not a fan of Section 503. I stood in front of the board, I believe about this time last year, about issues that I see with that section of code and problems it causes when you make an extension for candidates that are beyond the ones that make the written request. However, given the special circumstances of this case, I hope it would be the pleasure of the board to consider it. So, thank you.
As I said earlier, we proceed by motion, and no such motion was made at that time. All right. Any additional speakers for public comment? Any additional resignations? All right. If not, there's one matter before we go into closed session that I'd like to address, and it relates to some of the public speakers that we've heard today. I'm certain that other members, as well as the public at large, were as appalled as I was to read over the weekend that a recently appointed chairman of the local electoral board had made a vile, racist post on social media just a few months earlier. Despite his initial refusal to step down, This individual fortunately has resigned from his position on the electoral board, and Governor Youngkin deserves credit for acting quickly and decisively as head of his party to secure this individual's removal. But as far as I'm concerned, the matter never should have landed on the governor's desk. I'm convinced that if the responsible entities had done their job and had exercised due diligence, this individual never would have been appointed in the first place. The 399 members of local electoral boards play a crucial role in overseeing the mechanics of elections in the Commonwealth. Our system can succeed only if those men and women understand what the job entails and approach it with the seriousness and dedication that the position demands and deserves. I'd like to make one other point. This isn't a partisan matter. Both political parties need to show they appreciate the importance of positions on their local electoral boards and to demonstrate that understanding when they make recommendations to the circuit court for appointments to that board. With that, does anyone have any additional comments? If not, Dr. O'Bannon?
This is what a vice chairman does. I have a motion.
Gentleman will state it.
So I move that your State Board of Elections direct our chairman to write to the chairs of the Democratic Party of Virginia and the Republican Party of Virginia, emphasizing the crucial role of local electoral boards in the efficient and even-handed administration of elections, and seeking their assistance in ensuring that local parties' recommendations for appointment to such local boards under Section 24.2106 of the Code recognize the importance of such positions and the responsibilities of that office, and communicate with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Virginia, seeking his assistance in ensuring that the Chief Judges of the judicial circuits, in appointing members of local electoral boards under Section 24.2106 of the Code, recognize the importance of such positions and the responsibilities of that office. I'll just briefly, so I've been now 3 years here. This has not gone away. I think we have worked on it. I think there's plenty of work to do, but I think this is a reasonable thing to do to raise the issue with both parties and the party apparatuses on both sides of the aisle that do this kind of work. So you may have an inkling where this came from, but that's my motion.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board direct the chairman to take the captioned actions. Is there any further discussion? If not, Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink?
I vote aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Merritt?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. With that, I'll entertain a motion that the board go into closed session to receive the advice of counsel.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A7, I move that the board go into closed session for the purpose of discussing pending and threatened litigation. In accordance with Section 2.2-3712F, Susan Beals, Commissioner of Elections, and Joshua Leaf of the Office of the Attorney General will attend the closed session because their presence will reasonably aid the board in its consideration of the subject of the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. The secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Merritt?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. With that, we will go into closed session. Thank you all. Okay, we're up and running? All right. Secretary LaCruz?
Mr. Chairman, I move to reconvene in open session and take a roll call vote certifying that to the best of each member's knowledge, one, only such public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. The secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Merrick?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Dr. O'Bannon, do you have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. Your State Board of Elections requests the Attorney General's office to conduct an investigation to determine if there were irregularities or deviations from election administration procedures in Prince William County during the 2020 general election.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there additional discussion? If not, Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Merrick?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I have a second motion.
Gentleman will state it.
That your State Board of Elections requests the Attorney General's office to conduct an investigation of the functioning of the Electoral Board and General Registrar in the County of Nottoway.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board request the Attorney General to investigate the activities of the Secretary and the Electoral Board and Registrar of Nottoway County. Is there further discussion? If not, the Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Merrick?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Final motion. I move that your State Board of Elections accept the report from the Attorney General's office on Richmond City Electoral Board and direct the chairman of the board to write an appropriate letter to Richmond City regarding that investigation and its results.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, Secretary will call the roll.
Chairman Brink?
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Bannon?
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz? Aye. Delegate Merrick?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Is there any other business to come before the board? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
All right, Robert, that was relatively painful.